back to Frenchie's Forge. I am the Frenchman. Thanks for tuning in with me. In today's episode, I've got another pipe wrench. In the last episode, you saw me bang out a 14-inch rigid pipe wrench into a knife. And I think it turned out pretty good. That was from the last episode. I am shockingly surprised at how hard we got this thing in the quench and what a fantastic edge it has been. I don't know if you can hear that. You can take my word for it. It's incredibly sharp and it has been an excellent cutter so far. I was very surprised that this thing was able to get so hard and made such a good knife. So while I was at the flea market a couple of days ago, I went and found a larger version. This is an 18-inch. Now it is a different brand and not really sure. I tried to do the research on what type of metal was used, but I didn't know on the other either, so it is mystery steel. I'm assuming it's some sort of, medium carbon steel maybe. I'm kind of heat treating it like it was a 10 series steel. And in the last one, that whole heat treating cycle did it justice. I also found a little $5 brand new one there. This one's a little 10-inch, and this I think could make a cool little knife as well. But in today's video, we're putting this little guy aside and we're going to beat this dude out. Not really sure what we're going to make, but we're going to get it hot, we're going to hit it hard, and see what it wants to be. Let's get started. So here we are, step number 1, straightening out the end of the pipe wrench head. I feel like I have deja vu, as I just did a video last week pretty much doing this exact same thing. I feel like it's good though to maybe do the same sort of thing more than once, and that way you can kind of practice and perfect some of the steps that you do to get this pipe wrench into a knife. Last week's episode was the very first time I ever made a knife out of a pipe wrench, so wasn't really sure what to expect. And on the second go around, it's definitely more metal because it's a bigger pipe wrench. And here in a little bit I'll show a clip, kind of a side-by-side of the difference, but it's pretty much the same steps. It's just taking me a little bit longer to kind of get this bigger pipe wrench forged out straight. And I kind of expected it, but it definitely took about, I think the whole process took maybe 30 minutes longer than last week. And I think that's just due to the fact that there's more steel. This next clip coming up here is pretty interesting. I thought it would be cool to show. The large screen right here is the 18-inch doing the spring fuller tool, and you can kind of see the mass of it. And then the top right corner is last week's clip of doing the 14-inch pipe wrench. And even though I stink at editing, hopefully you'll be able to kind of see the difference in between the two. And if not, then I kind of did a like a still frame shot of it coming up here. And even though the picture is a little blurry here, you can at least kind of get an idea of the mass of the 14-inch compared to this week's, which is the 18-inch.
It's all right, Plankton. He's wearing sandals.
right, so there we go. Now we have this thing kind of profiled out, and we've got the pre-heat treat bevels put into this, and we're pretty much ready to start heat treating this. I will say that I'm really glad that I did this second pipe wrench. One of the things that I've noticed is my abilities and where I'm at in forging. I haven't done a whole lot of forging, so I'm still learning some of the different techniques and processes. I'm also picking up on different things that I need to be paying attention to while I'm forging out my knives. For instance, this one here, we have a nice clean line on this bevel, and that was easy to achieve because this side of the blade was planished well. It was really flat and it tapered from thick to thin. It made it really easy to accomplish this clean look. On the other side, it's not quite like that. And I want to say the reason is because we have a lot of these hammer blows here where the hammer has dented it. It's kind of hard to pick it up, but you know, as I'm doing more of these, I'm kind of realizing that the finish work that you do before you get ready to grind the bevels in is important. You want to get it in a really good condition to have symmetry and to be able to have the same amount of material on each side, to really try not to put a bunch of big hammer marks into it. Unless, you know, you were going for that look, and in that case you could make sure to do hammer marks really deep on both sides. And I've seen some blades that are like that and they do look really good. This one, I wasn't really thinking about it, to be honest. I was just trying to kind of get it into shape. You know, now that I've spent the time grinding this, I kind of am realizing that I need a little bit more practice in, you know, the ending steps of forging. So anyway, it's something to definitely pay attention to as you're learning to forge. You want to take a little bit more time towards the end of getting everything adjusted correctly, making sure that the blade is straight. You can see this one, that the blade is kind of off to the side a little bit. So there's a lot of little things that could be better about this. The last week's knife that I did, which was another pipe wrench, it's about the same condition. But that's part of the reason why I like doing the same thing more than once, so I can kind of practice and perfect some of those steps. If you're interested in learning more about forging, I would suggest another channel. The channel is The Rivers Experience. The guy over there, his name is Eric, and he is a fantastic bladesmith, and he does, especially lately, tons of forging. He does a lot of live streams where he makes knives like this, but he goes through the process and does a lot of really good explaining of why he's doing what he's doing and when to do certain steps and what to avoid. And he's a really good teacher, and I've been trying to learn and pick up some knowledge from him. So if you're interested in learning to forge more and you don't know where to start, I suggest checking that out. Anyway, let's go ahead and get this thing heat treated and turn it into a nice hard blade. Let's do it. is not much of a decarb layer on this. We're already getting this file to skate over top of it. Let's go ahead and get our testing files, and we'll start with the 60 HRC and run that across and see what happens. Let's try the 65. Okay, the 65 is, I would say, barely skating. It seems like it's starting to maybe try to bite, but not really. I would say that based upon these two files and this quick little test, that we're probably somewhere in the ballpark of 65 HRC, maybe a little more. It's hard to say. But that's a good sign. Just like last time, the outcome was pretty much the same. We got the file, the 65 HRC file to skate over top of the last pipe wrench. Anyway, let's throw it in the temper and then we'll see what we get when we're done. All right, so now that we have the post heat treat bevels finished out, we are now ready to kind of finalize the bevels and get an edge onto this thing. So right now we're pretty much stopped at 120 grit finish, and that's just clearly off of a 120 grit ceramic belt. You can see the scratches in the bevels going vertical from the belt. And unfortunately, I don't have a Scotch-Brite belt for the 2x42, but I do have one for the 1x30 here. So let's go ahead and run it on this 1x30, and figured I would show you guys kind of what it does for the finished look. So trying to get a rough shot here of the blade before the Scotch-Brite, and we'll run it over across a few times and then we'll show you what it looks like after. Let's go ahead and do it. All right, so there's the other side that we haven't touched yet. Trying to get to, there you go, where you can see the scratches, and it just looks kind of unfinished. And here's the side with the Scotch-Brite belt. So does it remove all of the scratches? No. But it definitely does a pretty good job at kind of conditioning the top layer of the bevels. So it really just helps kind of give a uniform shine to the overall appearance. Now, if you want it to be a little more meticulous and grind up past 120 prior to doing this, you could get a lot of these scratches out of here. But I think for the most part, that's a pretty good solid finish for a knife like this. So hopefully that helps somebody. And if you don't know what a Scotch-Brite belt is, or you haven't used one, that's what it is, and that's what it does for a blade. All right, there you go. We got our edge put onto this thing, and it is definitely good and sharp. Got some U-line paper, just like in our last knife that we did. Run it from the bottom of the cutting edge, and my light just went out. Come on, bro, I'm trying to film something. Dang. Run it from the bottom edge all the way to the top tippy tip of the knife. And no drags, no funky cuts, no tears. That's a really clean cut on our paper. So that is a good indication that this thing is super sharp. And I did this one just pretty quick on the 1x30 belt grinder. If you've watched my channel before, you kind of get an idea of how I do it. When I do it on the belt grinder, just use the little knife holder here, and then I run this along the back side of this, and that just gives me a constant angle and run through the progression of the belts. The other pipe wrench knife that I did the whetstones on it, and it took a tremendous amount of time getting it sharp, but still a really good outcome. For me, it's kind of a no-brainer because on the 1x30, it takes a fraction of the time and you still get a razor sharp edge. So that is what I'm going to be doing. I did enjoy the process of getting it sharp on the whetstones. It just took forever. So for me, it's really not practical. Anyway, I really am glad if you're watching to this point. I know it was another video just like last week, and hopefully that didn't bore you. I thought at first it would be boring to me to do it again, but now that I've done it, I'm really glad that I did, because I learned a few more things doing the second one. My biggest takeaways doing this is the sharpening, getting this thing razor sharp on the 1x30 in about 2 minutes, compared to about an hour on the whetstones with the last knife. And I just think they're about the same sharpness. They're both razor sharp. Once you get a knife razor sharp, can it be any sharper? Really? Let me know in the comments. Is there something more sharp than a razor sharp knife? Maybe. Anyway, for me, the 1x30 is definitely the answer for sharpening. My other biggest takeaway from this is the forging part. Like I talked about earlier in the episode, just the finishing work, and trying really hard to get the bevels consistent, the bevel line, I guess, consistent. And that's hard to do when your planishing skills aren't up to par and you leave a lot of heavy hammer marks in here, which I've done. So those two takeaways is totally worth redoing it. Let me know in the comments, what do you think? Which one do you like? In fact, let me go grab the other one and we'll do a side-by-side. How about that? Give me 1 second, I'll be right back. All right, so we're back. And I realized that I also forgot to put the maker's mark on both of these, so I went ahead and did that real quick. But at least here's a side-by-side of last week's on the bottom, the first one that we did, and then this week's, the top one. So this was a 14-inch pipe wrench, and this one's an 18-inch. So definitely more steel to work with on this one. The blade's longer. In all honesty, it's about the same width. The bigger one was a little wider, but I had to profile it back because one of the hammer marks was pretty bad towards the edge, and I didn't want to leave that. So they're about the same blade though, for the most part, just one's a little bit bigger. And the handles, I guess, would be the other difference. You know, here's the 14-inch here, it's a little skinnier, and the 18-inch is pretty beefy. But for the most part, they're pretty comparable. So anyway, there you go. There's another pipe wrench in the books, and I'm glad that I did this second one. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you on the next one.